Hey guys, I'd like to introduce you to Perspectives. It's coming this year, something I've been working on with some people, particularly my sister in the United States, and it's meant to give differing perspectives of certain very small parts of the world that we deal with now. One of which is solving how and why the Western world has crumbled so fast. Not the top layer, but the bottom layer, to see if we can identify the source of the problems. How it's going to work, it's going to work off percentages, just numbers 1 to 10, and very simple flowcharts. They'll normally be presented far better than this, but this has been rushed out. It's been rushed out because our Prime Minister is once again trying to put Trojan horse laws through Australia, and it's something that we need to be very, very concerned about, and to sort of substantiate why I believe that's the problem. We're going to go backwards. I'm going to start here. I'm sorry if this is hard to read. My handwriting's terrible. We were working on digital stuff down the track. But we're going to start here with the Bondi radical religious massacre. At that point in time, the government had two choices. They could do nothing, or they could do something. And this part in here red is to sort of explain possible motives for what they did. Now we know that the government pretty much initially did nothing, seemed to be a bit of a cover up. And the motives for that would be because they would possibly consider themselves very heavily accountable, that there was possibly AFP, Australian Federal Police, and ASIO interference that they would be held responsible for, or their tolerance of the left hate that they sort of oversaw and purposely did nothing on. Then we come down to eventually, well, they have to do something. I mean, the political pressure got too big, so they were forced to do something. So let's move down a layer of what their choices were. We start over here with the AFP again. So with the AFP, they have two choices. They can manipulate the AFP, which would be an abuse of power, or they can get the AFP and use the AFP to target risk and to be transparent, to talk about how these things come about, if there were changes that shouldn't be made, and to actually target the risk and try to stop another event by honing in on that very specific radical religion cause. Now, I'll leave it up to people to work out what they think Labor did, and then we can talk about that down the track. However, another option that they had was Royal Commission. Now, from that option, on the left-hand side, which is the negative side, they had the choices of limit scope and appoint a friendly. Appoint somebody who's going to not be too hard on them. Once again, motivation for both of those is, well, they're accountable for this. The Labor Party has done things that have contributed to this end result. Or they can do a full review to identify the problems and then fix the problems. Once again, I'll leave it up to everybody to work out where they think Australia is at the moment on this. The next choice is immigration. Once again, on the left, they can do nothing. I mean, they've changed this immigration, historical immigration pattern and opened it up, changed the criteria. Seems to be that they're targeting people from incompatible sources who would predominantly vote Labor. So that seems to be their incentive for doing nothing, is votes. And that they have determined that there's an acceptable death by government ratio, just like the insurance do when they try to do a recall on a faulty product. They work out what's the cost going to be. And in this case, Labor sort of seems to say, well, if we get 10,000 votes in and somebody dies, so be it. So that's something that we need to probably talk about. On the right-hand side, what they could do, what their other options are, is they could create a single policy without specifying any religion or any country of origin. Quite simply, as a nation, we should have a policy, and should already be enforced, especially when terror has been around the world. But any religion or country source of the people who conduct these terrorist activities, instantly banned for 5 years until they can review it. And if something else happens inside that 5 years, they just keep being permanently banned. So effectively, the people in side of Australia are responsible for allowing and keeping the immigration doors open. And I think that's something that we really need to consider as a policy. And this would also include, under immigration, they also had the chance to change the criteria to sort of make sure that they're not bringing in people who just do not fit into the 21st century. And that may be because they have 15th century beliefs. And that's okay for them to do that. And everybody each to their own, but if it's proven to be incompatible, then the government needs to protect Australians from that risk. Then we get into laws, which is pretty much where it's at now and why I'm making this video here. So on the left, once again, the darker options are Trojan horse laws. To bring in a huge bill like they've done, with the intention of using that to actually target opposition and to run a tyrannical government where people can be arrested for, innocent people can be arrested for simple things like expressing opinions, for loving their country, for wanting things to change, for wanting to be protected. So the other option is that they have is nothing. That's always an option. But instead it seems they've gone for the Trojan horse. And the motivations for that would be dystopia. The government walking lockstep with other countries like the UK, Canada, into this overreach of the government that's completely detached from what the people want. And this would include attacking citizens who oppose, and also misdirection of the use of the laws to target the middle and the right because they're politically opposed the positions on the left. And this is also duplicity. What they're doing is trying to look like they're actually doing something, but there's a scheme behind it. And I think most of Australia seems to have caught on to that. What they could have done on the right is they could have changed the protest laws to try and stop what's been some pretty obvious building up of hate and tolerance of that sort of activity. They could target the left hate, which seems to have gone through pretty much left without any sort of restriction or supervision whatsoever. Ban radical religious hate, which seems to be the one thing that they keep running away from and dodging. And ban anti-Australian sentiment. And I'm just going to pause it at this particular stage in regards to these laws before we go down to the other options, because I want to look at show you the other side of the board here. Okay. So what we've got here is another view on perspectives. Now, one of the things for people calling this a religious attack, which it is, and then the government trying to pretend that it's not, or diverting it from not, is they're trying to permit or allow people who are involved in the religion or have some sort of excuse or who are just reading from the text to be allowed to continue the very cause of the Bondi massacre. They're effectively giving permission for that one part, which is the only part that's needed. They've got these encompassing laws and they're actually excluding the one part that we actually need to stop, which is absolute madness. And once again, duplicity. However, I want to look at some of these things, and look, I'm an atheist, so I'm not into any religion, but I'm looking at the religion where it is related to the source of the problem, which is the Bondi. If the Catholics go out and do something, then, you know, I think they need to ban the hate in whatever religion says it or states these sort of things and then is allowed to build that up, or to corrupt minds into trying to do these sort of things. So I just want to refer to a few of these things and see what you think from a political basis, if we just change them to alter it from being targeting us, because, you know, 95 or 98% of Australians don't believe in this religion, and this religion specifically seems to target the non-believers. So if we look at this particular phrase or clause or whatever you call it in the religion, and it says there, kill them wherever you find them and fight them until there is no more unbelief. Now, the politicians seem to think that that's okay. So I was wondering, if we ever started our own religion, the religion of Latter-day Australians or something like this, and we used these exact same terms, but we changed it to not be the general population that's been targeted, but politicians. So if we said something along this lines, kill politicians wherever you find them, and fight them until there is no more. You can put whatever you want here: censorship, corruption, any of the things, two-tiering, any of the things that you could think could go and replace that word from this religious text. This other one, strike off their heads. Not much you could do to change that. This third one, however, kill the polytheists wherever you find them. Capture them, besiege them, and lie in wait for them on every way. So if we just change that to kill the politicians wherever you find them. Would the politicians have a problem with that? If these same texts were targeting them and not us? And this is certainly not a call for anybody to act. Far from it. What I'm trying to do is say to them, the reason why the politicians don't care about this is because they're sitting behind these security things where these people are not targeting the politicians, because the politicians are approving all this behaviour. Who they're targeting, and in this particular instance, it seems to be that they were targeting the people from the Jewish religion, and that's pretty obvious. However, they're generally targeting anybody from the general public, and this is why the politicians don't care. They're like, oh, if 10 of you die, or 20 of you die next year, whatever, as long as we're getting in 2 million votes, we really don't care. So this simple change, does that make them care? Would they actually say, for some reason, that this is now hate because it's targeting them? This is the point I'm trying to raise. This so one here, so when you meet those who disbelieve in battle, strike their necks wherever you've inflicted slaughter upon them, then secure their bonds. Once again, all religious texts that in any way that infer to this sort of thing are bad. But if we said those, so when you meet those who commit treason, what about that one? Change that to commit treason. Same text. Would the politicians then be concerned? Yes or no? Once again, not a call to action, even though these are religious texts. These are the call to actions, but I'm not just making a point here to see if it becomes a different perspective for them. And down here, you've got religion and society. I mean, one of them has to conform to the other. Our society has always had religion underneath it, which is great. It seems to be it was a lovely place in the 80s, 90s, 2000s. However, that seems to be flipping now, where we're asking society to conform to religion, which is madness. It's something that we need to change. Society should have very strict rules that require cohesion. If people don't want to comply with those rules, then they just pick another country. There's many countries where religion's put ahead of society, and that's fine. But it's not Australia. And the politicians who are supposed to be representing it have got to stop trying to make it this other way. So going back to their options to finish this off. So once again, that was not a call for any action. So don't send the bloody AFP after me and once again misdirect and abuse your power. So just to finish this off, down here we have media. Obviously the government has what they can do with the media, and here they've got propaganda, attack independent and uncontrollable sources like Twitter, which seems to be the way they're going, and duress, which is put the legacy media under duress to carry their narrative, and they do that simply by providing the financial resources that they need. If the government wasn't there, most of the legacy media would be dead. So they don't bite the hand that feeds them, and the government has that power to use that. On the other side, they could do nothing and just let whatever happens, or they could actually be transparent and make full disclosure and allow the media to investigate these things, which, as we can see, it's probably not going to happen. Then we have ASIO. On the left-hand side, you've got misdirect, which is to, once again, say to the security service intelligence office, hey, guys, let's try and stop all this stuff. Let's focus on these right and these middle people, and let's try to do something about religion, but we're going to do everything across the board, and demand a cover-up. I mean, really, the chiefs of ASIO, if the government has come through and said to them, hey, we don't want you looking at this risk, leave it, we're not worried about it, then that's something that should be disclosed to the public, because we should be able to replace the Prime Minister and all parties who are involved in that based on those circumstances alone. Once again, on the right, the good options that they have is transparency and target radical religion, which seems to be, once again, I'd almost say corruption and duplicity, where they're trying to say, oh, ASIO is acting now, but they're not specifically targeting the problem. And last but not least is Labor. The Labor government, the government that's sort of been heavily involved in this, that's led us into a new Australia that most people are not happy with, where there's been a detachment of the will of the majority, where we've had a huge influx of people coming to our country, which we are feeling across many, many spectrums in regards to things like housing, cost of living, all these things, crime, all these negative things, and of course some positives, but really the fact is this is not where we wanted Australia to be, I would say. So you get down to Labor. This is the last one with considerations. On the left, they can join in with the Prime Minister and try to support the Trojan horse, which is what they seem to be doing. You have here block vote, where they all have to vote at Labor under the PM's instruction or whatever the standard policy rules is, say, whatever we do, you're going to support, regardless of whether it's in the best interest of Australia or not. And then ask them to diffuse, which is a very, very standard and typical of the Labor people now, where they just refuse to answer. And this is the devaluation of the truth that our current political representatives have, that we need to really try to bring an end to. And this is pretty much Labor 101, which is to hear the question, respond something else to the question, try to move it away from what the actual cause is, divert, diffuse, whatever they're going to do. However, what their other options are is they just allow them to vote on merit, which is to say, hey guys, no problems here. You go and vote on what you think's best for Australia. And allow them to vote on a new PM if that's something that's, as a caucus, that they believe that they should be doing, which is something you would think, considering those 400 votes or signs of the petition asking for Albanese's resignation, considering how much trouble there is in this country and how badly it seems to be mismanaged, then yeah, I think that Labor should be allowed to call in and start a vote. So anyhow, guys, that's just the first go at the flowchart and for perspectives. Hope to bring you a lot more. Try to make it as simplified as possible. Just choices. Yes, no, 1, 2, simple things where we can go through. Now, if you have any other ideas, put them in the chat to say where you think people should, or other options were. Happy to consider them and comment on them. But anyhow, Danny Boyle out. Thank you. Goodbye.